that's the main dynamic of the story, and then you've got a couple of other characters, an elven huntress. I won't even you shouldn't have to guess who that's based on, and then they're on a quest to save a dwarf prince, and no offense to, I'm not trying to say that Sergeant Bill is a dwarf, but notice that, but he is the shortest of the four of us.
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 362. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week, and welcome aboard if you are new to the show. Joining me this week, the pistol-packing padre himself, Pastor John Bennett. Pastor, welcome back.
Good to be back, Lloyd. Thank you.
It is excellent to be with you. I hope things have sort of settled down for you a little bit. I know the last couple of weeks were madcap craziness with weddings and funerals.
Yes. Well, this was a first for me. This couple, they visited for the first time on Easter Sunday. They were there the following Sunday. The wife had an appointment with an oncologist and had told her the Tuesday after Easter that she had maybe 6 months to live.
Oh, gosh.
Visited the following Tuesday, was over at their house, visited with them for an hour and a half or so. She said, she felt okay. She just had some pain and so forth. Her body was just riddled with cancer. A few days later, she was on hospice care, and the 6 months turned out to be 3 weeks and 6 days. So,
oh, gosh.
Yes. So exactly 1 week before she passed away. This was right after. I guess they had the wrong phone number for me, and so the brother-in-law came over to tell me that, hey, she's in really bad shape, get a hold of him. And went over there on a Monday, and I told her daughter, who was engaged to be married, planning to be married in September, if you want to get married while your mom is still with us, it takes 5 days in the state of Minnesota to get your marriage license. Ended up doing the wedding on Friday in their home. Mom is in the hospital bed, and Monday she passes away, so... It was a whirlwind. I pray never have to go through a circumstance like this again. But the one thing that was wonderful to see is this young couple making that decision to go ahead and have the wedding right then and there. I don't think they'll ever go through life regretting not doing that.
No, that's... I can't imagine the whirlwind of emotions for them.
Yeah,
the joy and the sadness all wrapped into one.
Right. And this, I guess the moral of the story is you don't know how much time you have left, so make the most of the time that you do have, especially as it pertains to your faith life. So they hadn't been in church in a number of years, and they got back to church, so thanks be to God for that. Yeah. Never take for granted how much time you have left.
Definitely not. That's amazing.
So, and before we get on to the topic of the day, I had a bit of an update for you.
Ooh.
Yes. This is, and for anyone who remembers, this goes back to, this is probably 3 years ago. I had an interview with a man by the name of Hisham Shahab.
Yes.
For anyone who remembers that, he is born and raised in Lebanon, former member of the Muslim Brotherhood, converted is now Missouri Synod pastor. And he gave me a call. This was just the week before when I was supposed to be at a pastor's conference. On the day it started, halfway up there, I get the call that this woman had passed away. And the day after, he sent me a text, "Hey, I was hoping to see you up here." I guess he said, "Hey, I just felt moved by the Spirit to go to your pastor's conference." I think it had a lot to do with the fact that it's a really beautiful, scenic part of Minnesota. And some random young pastor happened to just be walking by him and saw him and said, "Hey, aren't you Hisham Shahab?" And had said that, "Oh, I heard an interview with you on Armed Lutheran Radio." And it turns out that he had a loved one who was, or maybe a close friend, I don't remember exactly which, that was getting married to a Muslim. And so he wanted to sit down and talk with Pastor Shahab and get his input on how to approach the whole thing. So you never know what you do in life, how that's going to pay dividends later down the road. So,
yep, that is very cool. And for those of you who don't know what the heck we're talking about, go back and listen to episode 89, and that is it's called "Leaving the Muslim Brotherhood," and it is Pastor Bennett's excellent interview with now Pastor Hisham Shahab. That was a really cool episode.
Yes, and Lord willing, I also roped him. I don't think I really roped him into it, but got him to come out for another mission festival. So hopefully I'll be able to maybe do another interview with him, and this time I'll try and get better quality audio so that we both have our own dedicated mics. And yeah, so.
Very cool. That is awesome. Well, before we do get into whatever it is we're going to talk about today, this was starting to look like a show about nothing about 30 minutes ago. Like today was going to be a Seinfeld episode, but we came up with an idea at the last minute. Before we get to that, I do want to thank the people who make all this nonsense possible, the members of the Reformation Gun Club. And today's shout out goes out to Anita from Old Fort, Tennessee, Guillaume from Osage Beach, Missouri, John from Spokane, Washington, Tony from Little Elm, Texas, Calroy from Boron, California, Melvin from Holt, Missouri, Catherine from Casper, Wyoming, Frank from Lake City, Michigan, Peter from White Bear Lake, Minnesota, and Paul from McKinney, Texas. Thank you all so much for your support, and thank you to all of the members of the Reformation Gun Club for making this show possible. We are listener-funded, folks. We have no advertising. We have no sponsors. We rely on these good people and many more through their monthly and annual contributions to keep the lights on and keep us doing what we do. And if you would like to find out more about membership in the Reformation Gun Club, all the benefits involved, including invitations to our monthly online hangouts, one of which, or the May version of which, is coming, I think we'll probably try to do it next week. Visit armedlutheran.us/gun club for all the details. Memberships start at $15.17 per year. That's a little inside Lutheran humor there. So check that out, armedlutheran.us/gun club. All right. So your schedule lately, of course, we've already detailed the craziness with your schedule. My week has been nutty with 3 projects sort of overlapping at the same time and deadlines and all this. And I had no time to prepare for today's show, so we're sort of winging it. But we came up with I think it's a little bit of a self-aggrandizing topic, but still, I think it'll be fun. We're gonna dive into The Fifth Command, which was a novel that I wrote earlier this year, and I sent a copy, of course, to Pastor Bennett. The main characters in the book may or may not be loosely based on certain podcasting celebrities that you might know from a popular Lutheran podcast. And interestingly enough, Pastor Bennett just finished the book. So what did you think? I haven't asked you this yet, so oh Lord, go ahead.
Well,
Take it.
you want me to start with the compliments or the criticisms, or no? I'm just kidding.
Wherever you want to go.
Book was great. I really enjoyed it. My primary recommendation, though, is for your listeners to buy the book because it was a fantastic read.
Thank you.
It is more or less a commentary in a fantasy literature manner of the Fifth Commandment.
Right.
Faithful to the Lutheran interpretation of the Fifth Commandment. For our Reformed brethren, that would be the Sixth Commandment. So,
Yes. Thus the name, the Fifth Command. And so what I was trying to do, you mentioned when I talked to you about this previously that you love fantasy literature. I've been a fan of fantasy literature since I was in junior high. Was a D&D nerd and read all Tolkien stuff until I got the Silmarillion and then like bashed my head against that for about a year and a half and gave up.
that's one I haven't read yet. Yeah.
I've tried many times. I got further in it this past year after the doomed Rings of Power thing from Amazon. I tried, and it's just a slog.
I haven't, yeah. And as far as what, the Rings of Power or the Silmarillion?
The Silmarillion.
Okay.
Rings of Power is terrible.
Yeah, I didn't watch a single episode, and I'm trying to keep it that way.
I made it through about 3, and then I watched some synopses and was convinced that I'd made the right decision not to watch anymore.
Did they throw in any transgender midgets? Because I figured that they would have had to do that sooner or later.
That's probably saved for season 2.
Unless it gets canceled first.
I mean, there's creepy, like gay vibes from Elrond and Celebrimbor, the guy who forged the Rings of Power. There's some just really weird sort of. It's not overt, but it's there. There's some odd comments and strange expressions and body language that is really kind of creepy. And there's some really, they try very hard to sound Tolkienian and they fail miserably. It is just absolutely, because you can sit there and you say, wow, would Tolkien have said that? No.
It's kind of like if Joseph Smith wrote a fantasy series.
Right. It's the most expensive fan fiction in history.
Well, for those of you who didn't catch my reference, if you've ever read any parts of the Book of Mormon, it's a clear ripoff of the literary style of the King James Version.
Yes. Jesus the Western.
Yes. Pretty much, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's pretty horrible. But I've read fantasy for years. I've loved things like the Elric series or what did I just read?
C.S. Lewis has a fantasy novel that he wrote that is kind of a melding of fantasy and science fiction. And I read it when I was in junior high, I think. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. So if any of our listeners know the book I'm talking about, please let me know because I'd like to reread it.
I can't think of that one either. Yeah, of course, I read Narnia but I wanted to write something in that vein. But one of the things that kind of troubled me about most of the stuff that wasn't either Tolkien or C.S. Lewis was the lack of an objective morality. It's a fantasy world, so you don't have what religion you do have, and this is true for like role playing games as well, especially if you're talking about things like Skyrim or the Morrowind games or any of those things, where you have these role playing games, and religion is not really a big part of it, and so the morality is always, well, these characters are good because they're good, and these characters are evil because they're evil, and it's all these sort of, it's very generic and superficial in a lot of ways. And I say this as a huge fan of the genre, but I was trying to figure out a way to do fantasy with the principles of Christianity and just trying to provide some moral framework, I guess. And I wanted to do something about self-defense, and I was trying to figure out a way to kind of work that stuff in. And I wanted it to be written in a way that younger readers could enjoy it and come away with lessons out of it. And I put together even a reader's guide for parents and for reading groups or book clubs or whatever, where you can sit down with your kids, your young readers, and you can discuss these things and draw parallels to the Bible and that kind of stuff. So it's not overtly Christianity in the way it doesn't feel like what are those, like the Bible Man series where you got the Christian superhero guy?
It doesn't feel forced.
Yeah,
like it was Christianity artificially superimposed over the storyline. It's written in such a way that a person who knows absolutely nothing about Christianity might not catch on that that's the actual point.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping to accomplish.
They might suspect it, especially when you refer to the good book.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I couldn't come up with a better. So there are euphemisms for things that if you're in the know, you'll know. But I didn't want, like you said, I didn't want it to be quite in your face. So the storyline, for those of you who have not gotten the book, and if you would like to, it's available. There are signed copies still available, and it's available on Amazon. But the story follows the adventures of a bard named Lewis, who meets a itinerant cleric named Geordie, and they go on an adventure based on, and it's all sort of based on the fifth commandment, the idea that you should do certain things, you have certain responsibilities to your neighbor, that love of neighbor overrides your love of self. And the whole way through, Geordie is sort of, Lewis is sort of the self-centered, sort of carefree guy who doesn't really think about other people. And Geordie sort of keeps prodding him along in the right direction, sort of dragging him in the right direction towards the things that he ought to be doing. And that's the main dynamic of the story. And then you've got a couple of other characters, an elven huntress. You shouldn't have to guess who that's based on. And then they're on a quest to save a dwarf prince. And no offense to, I'm not trying to say that Sergeant Bill is a dwarf, but notice that, but he is the shortest of the four of us. So
that's true,
and probably the toughest of the four. So it fits.
And as I read through the book, and I don't know Sergeant Bill personally aside from through the podcast, but a dwarf seems like he'd be the most likely to use a lot of profanity, and I kind of see that with Sergeant Bill. It fit into his personality, especially as a police officer.
Every now and then, he does like a good beer, and he doesn't mind carousing, And he's a quick draw. So I tried to get little things like that into the book. I don't know whether you noticed, like at the very end of the book where he's trying to get to his father's tent and they've got him surrounded and he whips the sword out so quick that it just surprises everybody. That was just, I had to get that in there. He gets kidnapped because of a knee injury in a fight. That actually happened. That's an actual thing.
Really?
With Bill. Yeah. I was at an IDPA match with him in Arkansas, and I don't remember how he's always worn a knee brace because he damaged his knee in a skiing accident when he was in the Army. And so he's always had to wear a knee brace. And we had a match in Arkansas. It's been 5 or 6 years ago now, and it was kind of a weird stage where it had been raining and they had put down some kind of mats or something to keep you dry because you had to run up to a low barrier and drop to one knee to shoot from low cover. And you had to move from one side of this thing to another, and Bill stopped, and his foot stopped on that mat, caught his foot, and his knee kept going as he planted his foot. And I've never seen a person's knee bend like that.
See, that's why I don't run in general.
That will make you swear off it. And so that I kind of worked that into the story of how the dwarf prince got captured.
That's right. He gets thrown from the horse, the horse trips in a hole or something like that, doesn't he?
He does. And when he describes what happens, how he gets kidnapped in the first place, he said he hurt his knee during the battle. His knee gave out.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that's how they got the best of him and ended up capturing him. So I snuck that in there.
But has Sergeant Bill ever eaten the flesh off a dead horse?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I couldn't swear as much. I think his wife would probably kill him if he did, but because I don't.
One way to build a healthy immune system, I guess.
I suppose so. Yes, that's true. I tried to avoid putting any profanity in the book because I'm aiming for kids or for younger readers, and I wanted. I had written that the executioner's tale last year, at kind of as a horror story for Halloween, and I had a gun club member or a former gun club member had said, "Hey, is this book good for kids?" And I was like, "Oh no, definitely not." You absolutely do not want to read this to your kids. It will traumatize them. So that got me to thinking about trying to do something that was more young reader friendly. And so I tried to avoid, like there's a point at the beginning of the book where Geordi and Lewis meet, and Lewis is talking about, and Geordi is talking about how he enjoyed the performance. Lewis being a bard, and not a very good one at that, the story starts out in a tavern in a little nothing hovel of a town, and Geordi's sitting in the audience, and they meet afterwards, and he says he enjoyed the performance, and Lewis says, "Well, you'd be the only one." And my original response from Geordi was, he called them mud humpers, I think. They're just a bunch of ignorant mud humpers, I think was my original. And then I was like, I probably ought to tone that down a little bit. So
that way you don't get any surprise emails that, "Hey, my kid asked me what a mud humper is. What exactly is that?"
Right. So there were places like that I toned it down. What parts of the book did you enjoy the most, or do you have questions about, or wonder where in the hell I got the idea for it?
Well, The thing that I hadn't caught on to, you had mentioned that Father Geordie was loosely based on myself, and I hadn't caught on to the other characters as part of the cast. That means that you must be Lewis.
That makes me Lewis.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah,
Do you dabble with playing musical instruments?
I do.
I think I remember you saying something about playing guitar or something like that, right?
I do.
Oh, that's right. You had composed all those songs where you played all the instruments yourself. That's right. I forgot all about that.
That's right. So I've got a little side project musical thing that I do called Metaloid, and I do music for the podcast, and then I've created some I've taken what I've started doing is taking the text of hymns from the Lutheran service book and rearranging them to rock and metal music. So that's been kind of fun.
And I've listened to some of that stuff and I enjoy it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So yes, Lewis is me. And
so the one thing I like, of course, is right at the start that you have the, it's not the pistol packing padre, but the flail packing padre.
That's right. I had to leave padre in there. I know it doesn't make any sense in context because padre is Spanish and there's no Spanish in the book, but there aren't any Spaniards in the book. My apologies to Disney for not including Spanish-speaking people, or John Leguizamo for not having Latin people in the book.
Or no polyamorous midgets.
That's right.
Well, it's fine because I've had plenty of lily white folk who probably don't speak a word of Spanish refer to me as Padre when they see me in public. So
yeah. So I just had to put that in there. It just felt more natural in the conversations between Lewis and Geordie, and of course Geordie likes his whiskey. So.
Yes. Yeah, and in preparation for today, you're asking me, what should we do? And I was thinking, gosh, can we come up with another drinking game? What is it? It is a prayer. It is a protest. Whatever it was, I forget what it was from last week.
It is a prayer. It is a demand. It is
That's right.
Protest.
That's right.
A hope, a prayer, a demand, and a protest. That's right.
Something like that. Some vomitous word salad.
Yes, absolutely.
Which there are no vomitous word salads in this book.
No.
So
no.
The overall arc of the storyline, very much appreciated. It was, there's tragedy in the midst of, you have the elf huntress who is, not to throw out any spoilers for those who have not read the book yet, but she endures a crisis in her life that causes her a great deal of sorrow. But, my big question after reading the book, are there any future adventures for Geordie and Lewis?
I'm thinking so. I've been trying to figure out a way to come up with what happens in the future for these people. And I have some ideas. And so I've just got to come up with I've got an idea for how to get them back together, because they all, at the end of it, none of them really has a home.
Right.
Except for the dwarf. And Daz, the dwarf, obviously is going to go home, but the others don't really have one, but they find it at the end. And so I'm thinking the huntress probably becomes the court huntress for the Count of Thone, and of course Father Geordie is preaching there in the county church, and they're rebuilding that cathedral that burned down in the book. And so I'm thinking that he finds sort of a parish home there, and Geordie or Lewis may find a way to settle down there too somehow, be near friends and
With the barmaid.
with the barmaid, who's
Yeah.
not based on anybody, and that is not. Don't get any wrong ideas about that. That was
I believe the barmaid is loosely based on the character of your wife.
there.
Good save, right?
Good save. Well done. So we talk about not just the fifth commandment. We talk about first article gifts and the discussion of at the beginning about the whiskey and sort of the pietisms of some who suggest that it's sinful to drink alcohol and that sort of thing. So there's some discussion of that. There's some discussion of authority of government and with the with some of the things going on, and the honor father and mother, the fourth commandment issue comes in a number of different ways with both the elf and the dwarf. And it's not a complicated story. I didn't want it to be complicated with lots of different storylines and threads going at the same time that all come together at the end. It's a very linear storyline, which should be easy to keep up with and hold your interest the whole time, so you don't forget what's going on with other characters. So I tried to avoid that kind of stuff, and it came out a lot better than I expected. The more I thought about it, the more the adventure grew, and I was like, this is going to be over really fast. I got to find a way for this not to be fast.
And I am not that fast of a reader. This was basically my reading material in the evenings before bed. I'm looking back at my text messages just to see what day I started reading that, because I started reading it the day after I got it in the mail. So I would read a chapter or two at night before bed. Sometimes if I was tired, I didn't read at all. I would guess, and I'm not that fast of a reader again, but I could probably read through the book in about 2 hours max if I was taking my time with it.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to write War and Peace by any means, and I wasn't trying to stretch it out too much. I didn't want it to be just too short and it's, all right, this is over with. So, but then I came up with ideas for the Enchanted Forest and that whole episode of trying to, why would it take so long for them to get out of the forest, and why would it? And then and then there's another lesson or two with the response of the king of the dwarves and his allowing his anger to overrule his good judgment. So, what did you think of the pastor's or Father Geordie's advice? Have I done a good job of? Have you rubbed off on me with your with your smarticles? What did you think of the pastor's of Geordie's sermons, his advice, his counsel? Have your smarticles been rubbing off on me? Did I pick up anything over the past 7 years?
Theologically, you sound like a theologian in the way that you write, especially in the last chapter. Throughout Father Geordie, he is, rather than trying to more or less force his point upon Lewis, who's primarily the student of his instruction, it's a very catechetical way in which he leads Lewis to the truth by asking him questions. It's about the time they're in the Enchanted Forest where you see a change in Lewis from the guy who's just kind of this self-serving, saving his own skin kind of guy who's just along for it because he felt guilted into it, to a guy who he transitions, and I know it's a dangerous word to use in today's culture, but he transitions into a character who is pursuing the good of others, even if it is at his own expense. Where he goes from being the selfish bard to the selfless and self-giving bard. And so, and that transformation happens not because of the, a Bible thumping Father Geordie, but because of a gentle and patient Father Geordie who, through catechetical instruction, leads Lewis to the truth. The closing sermon, and it wasn't, of course, it's more of a sermonette that's at the very end of the book, when Father Geordie is presiding over at the funeral rite for all those who perish. Again, don't want to give too much away. Please read the book, folks. It's a great book. That there's a lot of, I see a lot of connections there with the Proverbs. Well, I'm sorry. The Proverbs, that was more with his address to the dwarf king.
Right.
And then towards the concept of forgiving as Christ has forgiven us with the final sermon, or I should say the only sermon that we really read of from Father Geordie, about, the responsibility of the Christian to love and not desire harm of even their enemies.
Yeah. I was trying to find a way to sort of bring it all together at the end, all the tragedy and all the travail and everything that they've gone through, and now it's over. How do you tie that all together without making it seem cheap? And everybody lived happily ever after. I was trying to avoid that, but I didn't want it to be like, the movie Seven, where it just surprises you with some crap ending where it's just, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah, there's a head in a box at the end. Right. Who would have thought?
What's in the box?
No, and it's, I really appreciated the way you ended the book. The book is a commentary on the Fifth Commandment. And so often, and this is particularly true of those who are perhaps new to the Christian faith, or they've grown up in a faith tradition where there is an overemphasis of the law to the point of, a fear on behalf of those who fail to believe that they've done enough. But the Fifth Commandment ultimately is about pursuing the good of our neighbor.
Yeah.
And that's a point that the book drives home beautifully, I think.
Well, thank you. It's a point that we have tried to stress over the years in the show, is that it's more than, and all of the commandments are more than thou shalt and thou shalt nots. There's always another side of the coin. There's a positive side to the you shall not murder. There's a positive side to it. You should also, not only should you not murder your neighbor, but you should help protect him when it's possible. And so that's an important point that we've tried to make over the years on the show, and it was something that I wanted to showcase in the book a bit. And
if you reading through the New Testament, where do we see Christ's commentary on the Fifth Commandment? It's in the parable of the Good Samaritan.
Mm-hmm.
And so, your commentary on the Fifth Commandment is this wonderfully written book. So our desire as Christians is to pursue the good of our neighbor, even if that happens to be at our own expense. Now, we certainly don't want to take the approach of John Piper and say, hey, you can kill me so you can go to heaven. I'm not going to bother to defend my wife and children. Just go ahead and kill me. So that's, yeah. And if if you want a good laugh, if you haven't heard the episodes for a while or you're new to the podcast, go back and look at, just do a search for John Piper on the Armed Lutheran webpage, and you're in for a treat.
Yep, absolutely. What did you think about, I tried not to hit people in the face with it, but I thought it was fun. At the beginning of, which chapter is it? Chapter 10, after when they kind of begin their quest, and I think the chapter before that, when they arrive in the city of Thone, and they're forced to relinquish their weapons.
Yes. Father Geordi is like, concealed is concealed.
That's right. That's right. So he takes Lewis's sword from him, the guard at the gate, and then turns to Geordi and says, "Hey, how about you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm but a humble servant of the Lord."
Yes, that's right.
And then
that's right.
But then he
did not lie.
He didn't lie. He is,
and the guard did not press the issue any further.
And then there's I had to get in the part where they bring the bandit to the guard after Geordi saves Lewis out of the privy, where he was about to get skewered by this bad guy.
Is that a connection to the Old Testament story of Ehud?
Oh, I don't know. It might have been subconscious, but there's the so when they bring the unconscious bad guy to the guard, the same one who had confiscated their swords at the beginning when they arrived, and says, "Hey, here's the guy's sword. A lot of good your rule about swords did."
Yes.
I just had to do it. I could not avoid it. "Remember when you said I'd have no need of my sword?" Lewis said as Geordi dropped the bandit at the guard's feet. He described the encounter in the privy and then handed the guard the bandit's knife. "Well, well," said the guard with a surprised look. "This is exactly why we don't allow weapons in Thone." "If you'd been allowed to keep your weapon, this bloke might be dead by now." And then, of course, yes. So,
did you consult Mom's Demand Action for writing that bit?
I did. I got Shannon's approval. Oh my goodness. So there's a bit of humor in it. There's a little, I didn't try. It just came out that way. There's a little of everything in it. There's friendship.
Good deal of sarcasm.
Good deal of sarcasm. But yeah, it was fun, and I'm really glad you enjoyed it. And folks, if you would like a copy, if you would like a signed copy, I've still got a few left. And if you would like, or if you don't care about a signed copy, it's available at Amazon. Just look for The Fifth Command and my name, or go to the Armed Lutheran shop at the website, and you can grab a copy there. It was a lot of fun to write. I am trying to think of some new ways to get the four characters back together again. Some way to get Daz out of his responsibilities as prince of the Dwarven realm and off on another adventure. So
you could always pull the Prince Harry and swear off the crown.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a great idea. He marries
he marries the elf? I don't know.
He marries the elf, or he marries somebody, some non-dwarf.
Well, it's... And just brainstorming this, one approach would be, it's... Daz is not a believer yet, but, through the influence of Geordi, he comes to the faith, and he has a great moral conflict with some sort of immorality that is embraced and normalized among the rest of the dwarfs. And because of conscience, he has to leave. And that's one way to do it.
Hey, okay. I like it.
Just a crazy thought. The elf huntress could be, perhaps something happens where word gets out that there's a conflict, back at the Enchanted Forest, and
they get stuck
somehow
in
she
the
works her
Enchanted
way.
Forest.
What's that?
And they get stuck in the Enchanted Forest again.
Something I don't know. I need to drink more whiskey to better lubricate my mind to come up with some more ideas.
Definitely need to do that. Yes.
And hey, our listeners, if they've got ideas too, read the book first, and then
Yeah, that's a great idea. Get your mind going. Read the book. Have a little book club with your friends. Come up with some ideas for ways we can get these 4 crazy characters back together again for another book. That would be fun. All right. Well, thank you so much, Pastor. I really do appreciate your compliments. I'm glad you enjoyed the book. I really appreciate you being the inspiration for one of the 2 main characters. And
well, I'm very honored and flattered that you would do that. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate everything you've done over the last 7 years now, and it's been truly been a blessing to have your friendship in my life. And one of these days, by golly, I'm going to make a trek north and not only
either that or I'll have to make the trek south.
That would work too. Or maybe we could meet in the middle somewhere. We've been talking about doing that.
I look forward to the day when Father Jordy and Lewis can sit down and share some good whiskey.
I would look forward to that as well. Absolutely. I won't force you to listen to me play guitar though.
Oh, I wouldn't mind, as long as there's whiskey.
Enough to deaden
If there's
me.
whiskey, I don't care how badly you play.
There's a line for a future book. All right, folks, if you have any questions, if you have any comments about this craziness today, if you if you have an idea for a topic that you would like for us to discuss in a future episode, please visit our feedback page, armedlutheran.us/feedback. We would love to hear from you. Next week will probably be our online hangout, which, Lord willing, I'll remember to record this time. Till we get together again, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.